Hello, my name is Lietta and this is You Are Okay. I'm a psychologist who is overcoming depression, and I started this project to investigate and make research together with you what depression really is. When we hear the word depression, most people think of sadness, maybe tears, low mood, or being too emotional. But that's not what depression really is. Depression is not simply sadness. It is a systemic crisis that affects the brain, the body, and the psyche at the same time. It is about chemistry, hormones, cognitive patterns, and psychosomatic processes. And most importantly, depression is not weakness, it's not laziness, and not pessimism. It is not something you can just snap out of. Depression is a condition that requires understanding, compassion, and unfortunately, very often treatment. In this video, we will look at what happens in the brain during depression, how the body is affected, what happens in the psyche and behavior, and why it is so hard to explain to others. Also, how people can begin to recover. So let's start to talk and investigate about the brain in depression. I did some research from Aaron Beck, Robert Sapolsky, and Andrew Salomon in the Noonday Demon, and they show us that depression is tied to very specific changes in the brain. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for decision making, planning, concentration, becomes underactive. That's why people say, I can't focus, my thoughts are foggy, I can't even read a page. The amygdala, the brain's fear and alarm system, becomes overactive. This means even small stressors can feel overwhelming. The hippocampus, responsible for memory and learning, can shrink under chronic depression. This is why it becomes so hard to recall positive memories or to learn new things. Neurotransmitters, especially serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, become imbalanced. This is why the sense of motivation, pleasure, and reward disappears. For example, imagine someone who once loved painting. They had brushes, canvases, colors. It was their joy. And then one day they sit down in front of the canvas and feel nothing. The brain's dopamine pathways, which used to bring pleasure, are no longer responsive. Isn't a lack of willpower, it is a neurochemical reality. Now I want to talk what's going on with the body in depression. Depression is not just in the head. The body also suffers. Robert Sapolsky's work on stress shows how cortisol, the main stress hormone, becomes dysregulated. Some people have chronically elevated cortisol. This damages sleep, immunity, digestion, and even the heart. Others experience blunted cortisol response, leaving them feeling flat, exhausted, unable to mobilize energy. Psychosomatic tension builds up in muscles, breathing, posture. Many describe it as carrying a heavy armor on their chest or walking through mud. Example, a client once described depression like this. It feels like every cell of the body is carrying weight. Even brushing my teeth feels like climbing a mountain. This shows why saying just go for a walk, you will feel better, can be so insensitive. For a depressed body, even walking to the bathroom is a huge effort. And what's going on with the psyche and behavior? Depression changes how people think and see themselves. Aaron Beck the father of cognitive therapy, described the cognitive triad. First, negative view of the self. I am worthless. Negative view of the world. Life is meaningless. Negative view of the future. Nothing will ever get better. Together, these thoughts create a mental prison. For example, someone fails an exam. A non-depressed mind says, "That was tough, I will study differently next time." But a depressed mind says, "I failed because I'm stupid, I always fail, I will never succeed in anything." This way of thinking doesn't just appear once, it becomes a default filter. And now I want to talk with you why depression is not sadness. Sadness is a normal emotional condition. It comes and goes, and it can even be healthy and adaptive. Depression is different. It is chronic, lasting weeks, months, sometimes years. It blocks motivation and the ability to act. It causes anhedonia, the inability to feel pleasure, even when something objectively good happens. It is accompanied by physical symptoms, sleep problems, appetite changes, fatigue, slowed movement, or sometimes agitation. For example, someone may laugh at a joke, but inside they feel nothing. They may hug their child and think, "I should feel joy," but they feel empty. This is not sadness, this is depression. And the social misunderstanding of depression is really huge, I can say. One of the hardest things about depression is explaining it to others. Friends might say, "Just think positive. Other people have it worse. You just need to go outside." But how does it sound for a depressed person? You put them down in even worse condition. Depression is not solved by simple advice. In fact, such phrases often deepen the shame. Example, imagine someone with a broken leg being told, "Just run, you will feel better." That's how advice sounds to someone with depression. And now let's talk about the recovery. The good news is depression is treatable. The brain is plastic, the body can heal, the psyche can be reshaped. Psychotherapy, like cognitive behavioral therapy, psychodynamic therapy, trauma-focused therapy, all can help restructure thoughts and emotions. And for me, I think it's one of the most important part. Medication. Antidepressants can restore balance to neurotransmitters, giving the brain the stability needed for therapy to work. But think about it more proper, and you can watch my other video about this. And lifestyle interventions. Sleep regulation, movement, nutrition, social connections are not cures by themselves, but they are essential supports. Neuroplasticity. New research shows that the brain can rewire itself through consistent practice, new habits, and emotional experiences. Sometimes begins therapy and learns to challenge negative thoughts, like slowly "I'm worthless" becomes "I'm struggling but I have value." That tiny shift, repeated again and again, builds new pathways in the brain. Over time, those pathways become stronger than the old ones. And in conclusion for today, I want to say again that depression is not just sadness. It is a crisis that affects the brain, the body, and the psyche. It distorts thoughts, steals energy, and blocks joy. But it is not hopeless. With understanding, compassion, treatment, and persistent recovery is possible. You just should learn about yourself and care about yourself more. If you are struggling, please know you are not weak, you are not broken, and you are not alone. Thank you for listening.